This is an amazing opportunity, an amazing day for us all. I really want to also thank Evangeline Mitchell, who put together this awesome conference and all the work that she has done to do so. I also want to thank all of you who are here today for coming to listen and learn a little bit about the pre-law journey and the law school journey. So you may have heard a little in my introduction, and you may, I encourage you to look me up on LinkedIn or Facebook and get connected if you'd like to learn more about me and my journey. But one thing that kind of undergirds my journey and what I've done in my life has been kind of taking the unconventional route. So one of the things I want to do in my talk today is to present to you all 6 pieces of advice that will help you in your law school journey. These 6 pieces of advice are unconventional. There are things you may not hear. So there's generic and good advice that you can get from almost anywhere about the pre-law journey. Do well in your LSATs, or get good grades, or try to get scholarships, as well as good advice that you would get when you apply to, once you get to law school. Do well in your classes, try to get on the law review, learn how to outline cases for your final exams. What I would like to cover today are pieces of advice that you may not hear from other people, but will probably resonate with other Black lawyers, law students, and pre-law students like yourselves. So I hope we can cover a lot of really good bases. And my goal today is to make sure that you all have your questions answered and you have some more clarity about what this journey is going to look like for you. With that, let's get started. So my first 3 pieces of advice are centered on the pre-law experience, things you should think about before you jump in to enroll in law school. So the first piece of advice goes along with one of the questions that was in the Q&A. As an aside, I really highly encourage you all to jump into the Q&A on the Rover app. I will, if there's time permitting, I'll answer some of the questions as part of this session. And if there isn't time permitting, I will reach out on the app to the Q&A after the session. So hopefully that goes well. My first piece of advice is to do the diversity statement. So many of you may face a similar conundrum that I faced. When I was applying to law school back in 2009, 2010, when I was applying to law school, I wanted to write my personal statement about my experience as a Black man in the United States. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, and coming out of college, just like now, it was a tumultuous time when it came to race relations. We had a new president, Barack Obama, but we also had the slaying of Trayvon Martin that was in the kind of background of everything that was going on in the world at the time. And so I was driven to not only apply to law school, but to write about in my personal statement my kind of racialized experience, my racialized view. So when it came time to write the diversity statement, I kind of came at an impasse. What do I do to make this statement different from my personal statement? What do I do to make sure that the diversity statement stands out on its own? Also, and very importantly, I was applying to schools like the University of California, Los Angeles, where I eventually matriculated. I was applying to schools that did not legally allow affirmative action based on race. So the part of their admissions decision could not take into account my racial identity. And this also applied to the diversity statement, which UCLA also required. So how did you approach this conundrum? How do you approach this problem where your personal statement might talk about race, but your diversity statement is talk about something else? So what I generally advise is to take a step back Your personal statement for law school should address two questions. First, why is law school the thing that you must do? You've gone through many periods of your life. You've gone through many adventures. You went to college and you are graduating or graduated. Why is law school the thing you must do to fulfill your purpose in life? And then the second question that your personal statement should answer is, why is law school the next thing you should do in your life? What have you done in your life that sets you up right now to excel in law school and excel as an attorney or a legal professional? That question, the answer to that question can come from all the parts of your life and not just your racialized experience. What I did when I wrote my personal statements, I focused on the affirmative action cases that had happened with the University of Michigan back in 2006. And that experience helped me contextualize not only kind of my racialized view, but my views on justice and equity in general. When it came to diversity statement, however, the thing I focused on, and the thing I encourage you to focus on, is intersectionality. What makes you a diverse law student is not just your race. It's not just the color of your skin. It can incorporate that, of course, and it should, if that is an essential part of your identity and an essential part of your lived experience. What you should look into and think about is, how does your Black identity intersect and interact with other aspects of your lived experience? So you may not be able to tell from this video, but I am personally a very, very tall man. I'm 6'9" tall. My diversity statement was all about being tall. It was all about how, as an extraordinarily large man, an extraordinarily large Black man, I had a particularized experience navigating the world. I literally see the world from a different point of view, and I am literally the worst hide-and-seek player you can ever imagine. And so I talked about how, in my day-to-day life, as a large Black man, and as a large man in general, I could not hide. I was always visible and always seen. And that instilled in me, by necessity, a desire to be honest, open, introspective, and critical of everything that happened around me, because the world wasn't built for me. And I talked about in my diversity statement how I could bring that experience and that perspective to the classroom. So to wrap that up, my diversity statement differed from my personal statement. My personal statement kind of encaptured why law school was the most necessary thing I could do with my life and why I needed to do it right now. Whereas my diversity statement focused on the intersections between my Black identity and other aspects of my lived experience to show that I had a unique point of view and that I contributed something to the classroom and wouldn't just take the important things from the perspective. The second piece of advice that I would give you, and again, this applies to before you apply to law, as you apply to law school, before you go to law school, is to attend school where you plan to practice and live. This advice can be kind of hard for Black pre-law students. And one of the reasons it can be pretty hard is because we have a lot of options and views. We may be very used to, growing up in a place like Detroit, going to college in Atlanta or LA, and then eventually living or wanting to work in a place like New York or DC or Boston. We can jig-jag around the world, and if we're competitive enough applicants, we will be highly sought after by colleges across the country and law schools across the country. What this kind of promotes, especially with the scholarship game, is an incentive to think about like, oh, well, I want to practice in New York, but I can also, I could go to school out in California because, I got this good scholarship. Or, I think about living and working in Atlanta, but Georgetown, is the highest ranked school I got into. Part of my advice is to think very carefully about taking this approach. And the reason I say that is that once you get to law school, immediately you will be connected to a wide network of people and professionals of color who are in your local area. When I arrived at UCLA, we were immediately connected to the BALSA, the Black Law Students Association. And from there, we had swaths and reams of alumni who wanted to connect with us immediately. These alumni were all in the LA area. They practiced in all areas of law, and they were eager to connect and to connect with us. The offices of career services at law schools around the country are almost entirely connected to the immediate area when it comes to law practice in law schools. So when you approach your law school decision and where you want to go, the easiest route is to go to a law school in a place that you can see yourself living, because during those 3 years of law school, by the time you graduate, you will have developed a huge network of people who are in the local area working in law who are eager to connect with you. When I was in law school, I had a good friend, Michaela. She was from the New York City area, and she went to UCLA because of the scholarship, because of its rank, because of its opportunities. And what she found was that there was almost no external support for her in terms of getting jobs in New York City because it was an LA-based law school. What she had to do was she had to hustle herself every summer, every opportunity to find reasons and possibilities back on the East Coast. She had to do the heavy lifting. She had to do the hard work. This was a lot for her. She was extraordinarily successful, as many Black law students end up being with their hustles. And she found herself in a New York law firm upon graduation. But this was something that was an extra mile for her, not the easy way, and not the way that was kind of set up for her by things like the Office of Career Services. There's a caveat to this general advice, however. Some law schools, particularly highly ranked law schools, have connections and have networks across the country or in particular large hubs. If you go to Harvard Law School, for example, you don't need to necessarily want to practice in the city of Boston. The majority of Harvard Law School graduates who take the bar take the New York bar, and they practice in New York City. There's a direct connection in terms of alumni, in terms of career services, from Boston to New York through Harvard Law School. Other places have other connections like that. Schools in the Mid-Atlantic and to a certain extent the Southeast have natural connections to the Washington, D.C. And California law schools across the state shift people to big hubs like San Francisco and Los Angeles a lot. This is something you should consider, though, and something you should think about when preparing to accept a law school offer. I know many of you will get multiple offers, and where you're going to be located for 3 years and what types of opportunities, networks you can build should be a part of that decision. And that's something I don't believe is talked about enough. My third piece of advice, and this is my last piece of advice for your pre-law career, is to start reaching back now. An essential part of the law school journey and the journey as an aspiring lawyer is mentorship. You will inevitably, if you put yourself out there at all, find people who are eager and willing to mentor you, to advise you, to help you in your journey. There's an old saying that there's no such thing as a free lunch, and in law school, there are plenty of free lunches, opportunities to learn and to grow and to connect with people. And if you're lucky, lots of delicious free food. That's what I did, which is how I got to be the size I am now. What I encourage you to do is to take the mindset of being a hungry and eager mentee, but also being a searching and active advisor. Reach out to people who are 1, 2, or 3 steps behind you, starting now. Find other pre-law students. Find if you're still an undergrad right now, find freshmen and sophomores who are not, sure that law is what they want to pursue. Take them to lunch. Take them to coffee. Talk to them. Reach back and tell them the things you learned at this conference. Tell them the things that you now know that you wish you had known even 2 or 3 years ago. This will put you in the mode of being a mentor and a mentee simultaneously. As you enter law school, you will meet other Black pre-law students, college students, professionals, adults who are eager as you are now to learn as much as possible about law school. You need to be ready to advise and mentor from day one. If you're not, then it may be hard for you to balance the law school experience with the expectations and ideals of your mentees. And I encourage you to approach it in that kind of manner. Now, my next 3 pieces of advice are all semi-related and all have to do with the kind of essential law school trajectory for you once you arrive. Part of my biography says I'm a diversity law expert, and you may wonder what that means. And part of what that means is there are relatively few Black people involved in the law right now. This is something to pay close attention to. There are not enough Black people who are judges, who are prosecutors, who are defense attorneys, who are in corporate law, who are in public interest law, who are law teachers, who are law deans, who are people who just have JDs and do other things for other companies. There's not enough of us in any area or facet of the law. You may be encouraged to go to law school because you want to save people and be involved in the civil rights struggles that we deal with today. That is extraordinarily encouraging. The thing you should know is that you don't have to do that. And my piece of advice here is to take the path and the road that you think is best. Lots of Black people will enter into law school with, the race, with us in mind, wanting to help. The thing here is that because of the dearth of Black people across all areas of law, no matter what it is you do, you will be one of the few. You will be one of the privileged. You will be one of the few people that get to open the doors for others behind you in any area of law you can think of. And the important thing here is, if you think you need to do one area of law, but you want to do another area of law, you will find rather quickly that doing the thing you think you need to do will be much more taxing and much more exasperating than the thing you want to do. I encourage you to do the thing you want to do. If that's corporate law, if that's becoming a sports agent, if that's becoming a law professor who talks about, 18th century tort cases, do that, because by being a Black person in that space, you will be making a difference, even if it's not in the way that you think a Black lawyer should. This next piece of advice is something that's going to be, that may be controversial, but it shouldn't be. And this piece of advice is to uplift and support Black women. What I mean by that is that in law school and in many professional spaces, if you don't already know, there is a small, tiny, very constraining space made for Black men. Black men can be the cool guy, the fun classmate who you can talk about sports with. You can kind of rub off on and say, "Oh, look at my Black friend here." The guy who can take your microaggressions and take them on the chin and not really push back. It's a very hard space to be in if you're at all socially conscious or all racially conscious. However, that space does exist. It can be very lucrative, and you can be very successful in that space if you're a Black man. What I have found time and time again across professional spaces in law is that no such space exists for Black women. Black women are silenced, are marginalized, are stereotyped, and are pushed out at every step, from the first day of school until when time to get promotion to Parliament. It is all of our responsibility, particularly with Black men who are listening to this, to uplift and support the Black women who attend your law school, who teach at your law school, and who work at your law school. During my time at UCLA Law, one of the premier and most liberal institutions in the country, it was Black women who were, it was when there were two Black women in a classroom that the professor would get their names confused, even though they looked nothing alike. It was a Black woman who received hate mail in her student mailbox, calling her out for getting good grades and being an affirmative action case. It was a Black woman who was denied a permanent job after her summer internship, not because she wasn't an excellent attorney in training, but because of her attitude. It was also Black women who chaired and ran the Black Law Students Association. It was also Black women who made a fuss about the injustices that happened around the country and within the institution. It was Black women who organized our protests. It was Black women who organized our alumni base. It was Black women who did the work. If for no other reason than the selfish desire to reap the benefits of action against racial inequality, we should support and uplift Black women in law school. And if we don't, we will be in some serious trouble. But however, it's our responsibility to do so because of our shared humanity and our shared respect and admiration for Black women. And of course, I don't mean to uplift and support Black women in a paternalistic way, in a way in which you make the decision about what's best for them and then you act on that. Supporting and uplifting Black women means listening to them, following them, and doing so with the knowledge that you have more to gain from them than they have to gain from you. I'm gonna let that linger for a second. My last and final piece of advice is go to therapy. I've dealt personally with anxiety and depression for most of my adult life, most of my teenage life, things that I've been ill-equipped to deal with. I was a teenager in college before the Affordable Care Act, and so because of our income level and our precarious economic position, I did not have health insurance for most of high school and all of my undergrad education. It wasn't until I got to law school that I had mandatory health insurance and the ability to seek and see therapy throughout my time at UCLA. Now, therapy can be an extraordinarily beneficial thing. Like church or friends or family, where you can seek support and receive inspiration. Therapy is a space where you can breathe, when you can exhale, be yourself, and truly have the space to understand what's going on around you. The thing that makes therapy different from those other examples is that you have a professional who is there with you, who can help you take stock, help you take perspective, and help you understand the world and what's happening to you in the world outside of that personal connection to you and that personal investment in you. You're going to receive as close to an objective opinion about what your life is like as you can really get. And you're going to receive guidance and support that you will absolutely need in law school. Even if you're not like me and you've never had serious mental health concerns in your life, law school is an environment that you, by definition, have never experienced. And it can be extraordinarily trying. It can be extraordinarily taxing. You will spend time in common law and property and torts and all your other courses reading cases about the basic injustices and indignities delivered upon people because they are Black. This will take a toll. This is something that you have to carry with you your entire time in law school that other people will not. You will walk the halls knowing that you are seen in almost all cases as an anomaly, more so than a normality. This is a hard burden to carry. And I encourage you from day one, for as long as you need it, to have that support and that help. So those are my 6 pieces of advice. Write your diversity statement. Go to law school in a place that you want to practice or at least want to build a network. Start giving back and pitching in right now. Take whatever path you want, as long as you're a trailblazer. Support and uplift Black women and go to therapy. Hopefully, if you start the process from day one with this in mind, with these 6 things in mind, you will have a successful and uplifting experience in law school. You will leave law school with the full knowledge that you did everything you needed to do to find success. And if you keep these things in mind, it might just make it easier to read all of your cases, do your outlines, take and do well on the LSAT, take and do well on your exams, pass the bar, etc., and all the other traditional aspects of success in law school. So I will leave you with that. And I really appreciate the time that we got to have with each other. Again, as we close, I will go to the Wover app and address the Q&A. Please contribute to that. I would be happy to talk. Please contact me if you'd like on LinkedIn or Facebook. I'm relatively easy to find. Thank you so much.